Jesus never said that the world would know his disciples by how correct they were. He said the world would know his disciples by how they loved.
The flawed Christian. The flawed Christian. The flawed Christian. The flawed Christian. The flawed Christian.
Family, we live in a day and age where everybody wants to be right. Not mostly right, not kind of right, but dead center, screenshot the comment, bookmark the argument, I told you so, right. Social media has turned everybody into a theologian, a political major, a cultural analyst, and a prophet. And somehow, everybody's conclusions are inspired by the Holy Spirit and confirmed by their algorithm. We flex our knowledge, we sharpen our arguments, we polish our hot takes, and we feel spiritual when we correct somebody else. But here's the danger. Being right can feel spiritual when it isn't. You can be doctrinally accurate and spiritually anemic. You can win debates and lose disciples. You can know the book through and through and not know the author. Paul warned the church early on that knowledge has the ability to puff up the ego, while love actually builds something worth standing on. Knowledge puffs up, love edifies. And if you don't watch it, you'll start confusing intellectual confidence with spiritual maturity. See, Jesus had a lot to say about people like that. In Luke 18, Jesus tells a story that hits uncomfortably close to home. Two men go to the temple to pray. One is a Pharisee, respected, disciplined, morally upright. He knew his Bible, he knew his theology, he knew his traditions and his laws. If there were church attendance charts, his picture would be up on the wall. The other is a tax collector, a walking compromise. Everybody knew his sin, and he knew that everybody knew. The Pharisee stands tall and prays what sounds like a good prayer until you listen closely. He thanks God, sure, but if you listen carefully, most of it is about himself. He compares, he contrasts, he congratulates. In modern language, he's basically saying, Lord, thank you that I'm not like those people. Listen, anytime your prayer requires a comparison chart, humility has already left the room. Then there's the tax collector. No resume, no spiritual flex, no eye contact, just a bowed head and a broken sentence. God, be merciful to me, a sinner. And Jesus drops the shocker. The tax collector went home justified, not the Pharisee. Why? Because righteousness doesn't start with how much you know. It starts with how honest you are. See, the Pharisee trusted his performance. The tax collector trusted God's mercy. The Pharisee thought he was rich. Man, he was broke. The tax collector knew he was broke. And that's why grace showed up. Now let's bring this into our zip code. We're right about everything. Right about theology, right about politics, right about worship styles, right about Bible translations, right about how people should parent and vote and spend their money and spend their lives. And we say it loud, we say it often, and we say it like Jesus hired us personally for his PR department. But Jesus never said that the world would know his disciples by how correct they were. He said the world would know his disciples by how they loved. Not by how well they debated. Not by how fast they corrected. Not by how sharp their clapbacks are. Not by their heresy hunting. No, love. Paul says you can understand mysteries, possess knowledge, and still amount to nothing without love. Not less effective, nothing. Truth without love becomes a weapon. Conviction without compassion becomes cruelty. And if we're honest, some of us don't really want to help people. We just want to correct them and be right about them. Nobody was more right than Jesus. Sinless, flawless, truth in human form. And yet, sinners weren't repelled by him, they were drawn to him. A prostitute found safety at his feet. A tax collector climbed a tree just to get a glimpse of him. And Jesus invited him over. A woman caught in the physical act of adultery expected stones, but left with dignity and guidance. Jesus never lowered the standard, but he always raised the person. His holiness wasn't cold. His righteousness didn't crush. His truth wasn't rigid. It healed. Self-righteousness always follows the same loop. Comparison, judgment, offense, isolation. See, grace runs differently. It starts with remembering you were forgiven. That produces gratitude. Gratitude produces patience, and patience opens the door for transformation. When you remember where God has found you, it becomes harder to look down on someone where someone else is standing. That's the difference between being right and being righteous. One builds walls, the other builds bridges. What if we listened before correcting? What if we cared before critiquing? What if we served instead of scoring points? You can be eloquent. You can be well-informed. You can be persuasive. But without love, it's all just noise. Jesus didn't come to win debates. He came to make disciples. Jesus never told us to be right. He told us to be light. Yes, truth matters. Doctrine matters. Conviction matters. But if love isn't leading, all of it becomes distorted. The goal isn't to prove that we're correct. The goal is to reflect Christ.
The flawed Christian. The